You might be wondering why a Persian empire founded by Cyrus was called the Achaemenid Empire. It's worth taking a little time to explore his lineage and try to present it as best we understand it. The dynasty is named after Achaemenid, the apical ancestor from which all of the first rulers of the First Persian Empire descended. Whether or not he actually existed, though, is still a matter of some debate. The main source we have for his existence is the Behistun inscription, a giant rock relief carved into Mount Behistun in the Zagros Mountains. Commissioned by King Darius the Great, the inscription tells of his own rise to power. Scholars are fascinated by the Behistun inscription because it was vital in helping them understand cuneiform script, as the inscription was written in 3 different languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian. In that regard, this monument is similar to the Rosetta Stone, which helped us to decipher hieroglyphics. To us, it is relevant because in the first section, Darius traces his lineage all the way back to Achaemenid. According to the family tree presented in the inscription, Achaemenid founded the dynasty and was succeeded by his son Thaspes. There is some corroborating existence, not only that Thaspes existed, but that he captured the city of Anshan and became king. Here is where the family tree branches in 2 directions. Thaspes had 2 sons, Cyrus I, grandfather of Cyrus the Great, and Ariaramnes, great-grandfather of Darius. When Darius became king, he married 2 of Cyrus's daughters, and later his granddaughter, thus merging the branches once again. So it is possible that the lineage is that straightforward, but here's the problem that many scholars have with this notion. Cyrus himself makes almost no mention of Achaemenid. In the Cyrus Cylinder, which we talk about a bit later, Cyrus identifies himself as a son of Cambyses, a grandson of Cyrus and descendant of Thaspes. There is no mention of Achaemenid. The only reference is an inscription on a column at the ruins of Palace P in Pasargadae, which says, "I am Cyrus the king, an Achaemenid." This could have been added later, and some archaeologists indeed believe that this is the case. They opine it was the work of Darius, who wanted to strengthen his claim to the throne and establish continuity with the previous kings, who, until him, had always been direct descendants of the previous rulers. Now, there is a bit of good news. There's not going to be any confusion about that sort of stuff these days, because we're excellent at sharing information, and a great way to do that is online. Cyrus had conquered the kingdom of Media and brought it, as well as its vassals, under his command. Unsurprisingly, not everyone was okay with his conquests. Specifically, he earned the ire of King Croesus of Lydia, who was the brother-in-law of Astyages. Croesus was famed for his vast wealth, and even today you might be able to describe it as being richer than Croesus. You might also know him for his ill-fated counsel from the Oracle of Delphi. He sent the priestesses their priceless gifts, such as statues and vessels made of gold, and asked them if he should send an army against Cyrus. The Oracle, also known as Pythia, replied, "If Croesus goes to war, he will destroy a great empire." Never did it occur to him that it might be his own. So the Lydians crossed the Halys River into Cappadocia and captured the city of Pteria. This most likely occurred in 547 BC. Cyrus mustered his own army and marched to regain his land. The 2 sides met in battle and fought a stalemate, with both sustaining heavy casualties. Strategically, it was a victory for the Persians, and Croesus fell back to the Lydian capital of Sardis. His plan was to wait out the winter and in spring attack again with a larger army, which included his allies such as the Egyptians, the Babylonians, and the Spartans. Foolishly, Croesus disbanded his remaining soldiers, thinking that Cyrus would never march on Sardis with winter fast approaching. But the Persian king did just that. Cyrus knew that his best shot at victory would be a quick assault before Croesus gathered reinforcements. The 2 armies fought again in December at the Battle of Thymbra, where Cyrus scored a decisive victory. According to Herodotus, the winning strategy came courtesy of Harpagus. The Lydians had a large and powerful cavalry. To counter that, Harpagus advised Cyrus to put his frontline soldiers on the dromedary camels that they brought along to carry food and cargo. His reasoning was that horses were afraid of camels and even hated their smell and would turn to flee when they met. Indeed, this was the case, and many Lydian soldiers were thrown off their mounts and quickly dispatched by the Persian infantry running behind the camels. Most of the Lydian army surrendered. What was left of Croesus' forces retreated to Sardis, but of course Cyrus followed closely and laid siege. Croesus hoped that his allies might still come and save the day if he could hold out long enough. Alas, the siege lasted only 14 days. The Persians entered Sardis by scaling a section of the wall that was completely unguarded. The grounds outside were so steep that they were thought to be unclimbable. But a soldier named Hieroides proved that it was possible, and the rest of the Persians quickly followed suit. And so Sardis fell, and with it the kingdom of Lydia, which after 650 years became a province of the Achaemenid Empire. The fate of Croesus is a question that remains unanswered today. According to Herodotus, Cyrus intended to burn him on a pyre, but the god Apollo sent a rain to put out the flames. Seeing that the former Lydian king had divine protection, Cyrus allowed him to stay on as one of his courtiers, as he did with the Stuartes. Of course, this is a rather fanciful tale where the once mighty king gets a happy ending. The poet Bacchylides said that Croesus wanted to burn himself alive, but that Apollo took pity on him and sent him with Hyperboreans, a mythical race of giants in the land of the north. Scholars have interpreted this as a poetic way of saying that the king had a peaceful death. The last piece of evidence, which suggests that Croesus indeed died during the fall of Sardis, is the Nabonidus Chronicle once again. It states that in the year 547 or 546 BC, during the month of Adjaru, which corresponds to April or May, Cyrus marched against a country, killed its king, and took its possessions. The only problem is that the inscription is partially damaged and we can't make out the name of the country. It could have been Lydia, or it could have been someplace else. Cyrus continued his conquering ways and captured many cities in Asia Minor and Mesopotamia. And so this continued until there was only one other power left in all of Western Asia, the Neo-Babylonian Empire, ruled by King Nabonidus, whose chronicle we have used and will continue to use as a main source. Unsurprisingly, war erupted between the two nations. Unfortunately, while we know the major points, we have very little detail on the war. The only large-scale battle that we know of took place at Opis in 539 BC, and it was a decisive victory for the Persians. Days later, they took the city of Sippar, which surrendered without any bloodshed. Interestingly enough, multiple sources indicate that Cyrus walked into Babylon itself without battle. And here we arrive at another contentious point. The Cyrus cylinder, for instance, portrays the Persian king as a liberator who was welcomed with open arms by the Babylonians. This is not completely out of the question, as Nabonidus might have been an unpopular king who angered his people by ignoring the Marduk, the patron god of Babylon, and trying to enact a religious reform based around the worship of the moon god Sin. The Nabonidus Chronicle also says that the army of Cyrus entered Babylon without battle, but does not provide us with any juicy details. This could mean that the people were happy with their new king, but it could also fall in line with differing ancient accounts which say that the two armies simply fought outside the capital. However it happened, the outcome was the same. Mighty Babylon had fallen and was now part of the Achaemenid Empire, never to be an independent power again. Now Cyrus was king of the four corners of the world, a title meant to denote a person who ruled over the whole of Mesopotamia. However, he was faced with a new problem. How would he oversee and manage the largest empire the world had ever known? Obviously, he couldn't be everywhere at once, but his kingdom would be full of issues which demanded his attention, from serious problems like riots, uprisings, and food shortages to mundane affairs like taxes and military recruitment. Cyrus employed a primitive version of a federal government. He divided his empire into administrative units known as satrapies, which were run by governors called satraps. 26 satraps were appointed in Cyrus's time, and they ruled in his name, dealing with all the issues that might arise in their regions. They had a lot of authority, but Cyrus had the forethought not to give them too much unchecked power. There were still officials who were outside the purview of the satraps, and they reported straight to the king. They included army generals, finance officials, as well as a special courtier who went from one satrapy to another to conduct inspections, known as the Eye of the King. Truth be told, this was a strategy that Cyrus borrowed from the Median Empire. They used client kings who acted like governors over smaller autonomous areas, but Cyrus was the first to employ them on a really large scale. This innovative approach to the administration of a large empire proved successful, even as Cyrus's successors continued his expansionist ways to add new kingdoms to their lands. A testament to this was the fact that the empire lasted for another 200 years after Cyrus's death, until it was conquered by Alexander the Great. By comparison, Alexander's empire immediately collapsed and splintered after he was gone. Perhaps another factor which helped stabilize the Achaemenid Empire was Cyrus's alleged policy of tolerance. There are multiple historical and religious texts which assert that Cyrus allowed the people he conquered to practice their own customs and religions. He endeared himself to the Babylonians by taking part in their New Year's celebrations and obtaining the blessing of the god Marduk. In the Bible, it says that he allowed the exiled Babylonian Jews to return to their lands. Consequently, he is referred to as anointed of God. One artifact that was greatly responsible responsible for Cyrus's reputation as a liberator and champion of human rights is the Cyrus cylinder. Recovered from the ruins of Babylon, it now sits in the British Museum and is often hailed as the first charter on human rights in the world. This view was chiefly promoted in 1971 by Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the last Shah of Iran. The idea was continued by the United Nations, but it is one that historians and scholars are not really happy with. They see the cylinder as a priceless artifact, but one that is filled with standard propaganda. Basically, it portrays Nabonidus as an unjust ruler and shows Cyrus as the liberator chosen by Marduk to come and save the Babylonians. It is in line with Mesopotamian traditions and should not be regarded as anything more than a political declaration. The death of Cyrus ends with one big question mark, as there are at least 5 different outcomes according to ancient sources. Although some assert that the king died peacefully at home, most agree that Cyrus met his end in battle. Against whom exactly? Well, that's a bit of a bone of contention. Herodotus, again, gives one of the most detailed accounts, although even he admits that he had multiple stories, and this is simply the one that he deemed most worthy of credit. In 530 BC, Cyrus fought the Massagetae, a nomadic Scythian tribe ruled by Queen Tomyris. Cyrus first extended an offer of marriage to the queen, which she refused, although another source presented Tomyris as the wife of Cyrus. Either way, the two armies were supposed to meet in open battle, but Cyrus set a trap for the troops and killed many of them, including a general who happened to be the son of the queen. Angered by this deception, Tomyris gathered all of her remaining forces and met the Persians in a fierce battle where she emerged triumphant. Most of the Persians had been slain, Cyrus included, ending his reign of 29 years. Not satisfied, Tomyris tracked down his body, decapitated him, and dipped Cyrus's head in a pool of blood so that the king might fill his bloodlust, which cost Tomyris the death of her son. The remains of Cyrus were interred in a mausoleum in the capital of Pasargadae, named after his tribe. The ruins of this ancient city still exist today near the city of Shiraz in modern-day Iran, and the most treasured landmark today is the tomb of Cyrus. Oddly enough, the tomb might not have actually been around today if it were not for the greatest enemy of the Achaemenid Empire, Alexander the Great, who was an admirer of Cyrus. Greek historian Arrian related how the Macedonian king paid a visit to Cyrus's tomb after conquering his empire. He was deeply angered to discover that thieves had desecrated it and stolen almost everything of value. The golden lid on top of Cyrus's coffin was gone. His body had been thrown to the floor, perhaps in a failed attempt to steal the entire coffin, which proved too heavy. Alexander ordered the tomb repaired and Cyrus's remains restored to their proper place. He also had the guards of the monument arrested and tortured so they would give him the names of the thieves. Also, there was an inscription which does not exist anymore, so the exact wording is a bit iffy. It said, "O man, I am Cyrus, son of Cambyses, who founded the empire of Persia and ruled over Asia. Do not grudge me my monument." So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below and do not forget to subscribe. We got brand new videos just like this, currently 4 times a week. So please do hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you find out when we put out a new video. Also, why not check out another channel I do called Geographics? If this channel is about people, that one is about places. It's linked to below. And as always, thank you for watching.